Thanks, Sid. So I'll just do a quick recap. So we had Kate talking about how we should be using semantics for driving business decisions. We had Alex talking about correlation. We had Catherine talking about how we can use semantics to shape the future. Bill spoke about his opinion that it's not just about text analytics, it's much more. Mike spoke about machine learning. Erin spoke about emotions, which is the next frontier. Daniel spoke about big data. Chris spoke about reliability, and Janine spoke about mobility. Hi, my name is Shiva. I work with Infosys. In my presentation, I'll try to stitch many of these concepts together. My topic is sentiment analysis for the consumer genome. I work for Infosys. Infosys is a leading consulting, technology, and outsourcing provider, $7 billion in revenue. I am the CTO for the Retail, Consumer Goods, Life Sciences, and Logistics Business Unit. So let's look at where we are today. We have the empowered digital consumer, and we have the digital retailer. The digital consumer is able to access whatever she needs on a website, through mobile devices, and is very vocal. She talks about stuff that she likes, products that she likes in various social media, and there are many people that actually actively follow what she says, and then they maybe retweet it, etc. So she is very empowered. At the same time, she faces a massive deluge of information from marketers. There are too many sources of information and too many SKUs. For example, a large retailer has more than 100 million SKUs when all is said and done. So she is very selective about where she gets information from and who she trusts. So she is careful about who she trusts, what information she wants, when she wants it, where and how. And she prefers interactive communication, not just one-way communication. Finally, in today's world, brand stickiness is predicated on how effective a retailer is in being relevant to the consumer. So that is the digital consumer. Now the retailer, of course, they have to find ways to be more relevant to the consumer. The retailer has to make sure that the retailer's interaction with the consumer is seamless across all the channels, retail, the point of sale, e-commerce, social sites, etc., and has to find a way to be relevant to the consumer. Hence, the consumer genome. Let me take some time to talk about this. Everybody is familiar with the human genome. The human genome is the entirety of heredity information in a species, which is the humans. There is a similar concept in music. Pandora has something called the music genome. What is the music genome? That is essentially an information model which has about 400 odd attributes in a proprietary format. These talk about things like cadence, rhythm, tone, etc. These are characteristics of any kind of music. So if you said, hey, I like Black Dog from Led Zeppelin, then maybe it's going to say, yeah, maybe you should listen to something else. Maybe you should listen to Child in Time from Deep Purple, for example. So it's able to figure out what are the attributes of that particular music and the genre, and is able to make recommendations based on that. Similarly, the consumer genome. A consumer has some key attributes, such as a consumer has needs, immediate needs. I need to buy a car. I need to buy an elliptical. Okay? A consumer has social influences and people that the consumer influences. So if I want to buy a book, I'm going to listen to what my friends are talking about, and maybe if I talk about a book, some of my friends are going to buy it. The consumer has interests. I'm interested in running a marathon. I'm interested in chess. So there are some key attributes that make up a consumer, and that in its entirety, that information model is the consumer genome. And my hypothesis is that if a retailer is able to capture that consumer genome, it is able to be very relevant to the consumer in the following manner. It's able to provide the right products the right kind of promotions at the right time, at the right channel, and also on the right location. If a retailer can do this, obviously it's going to drive more traffic, not only to the website, but also to the store. It's able to drive conversion, is able to drive the basket size, top line, and margins. Let me give you an example. So let's meet Joanne. Now, if she is willing to share information with the retailer and give the retailer access to Facebook and other social sites, then the retailer knows the following. The retailer knows who she is. She is not just a phone number, not just a credit card number. The retailer is able to tap into her consumer genome, is able to figure out what does she like. She's 22 years old. She likes to run. What kind of shoes does she buy? Who's her dad? What does her dad like? What kind of things does she like on Facebook? What is her, what kind of sentiment does she express when she buys something on the website? What does she talk about? Shoes and so on. And then you are able to use that information to target events. For example, the retailer could say, okay, it's going to be June 17th, it's Father's Day. I know the kind of genome that Joanne has. She has some kind of perception of value, which is reward by price. She has some kind of perception about delayed gratification, instant gratification, and so on. She has some kind of value system, some kind of things that she likes. Plus, you also know what her father likes. And hence, the hypothesis is that you would be able to make targeted recommendations to Joanne for a particular event, which is Father's Day. That is the hypothesis. So it's need-based targeting. The need is, hey, I need to get something for my dad. Value proposition, so is it value for price, etc. And how should I gift this? Is it a gift card? Is it something I buy online? And when should I give it? So for the retailer, the key thing becomes determining the next best course of action for Joanne. Right? If she is an existing customer, if she is a loyalty customer, then they know her shopping patterns, her buying behavior, what she likes. If she's a new customer, then obviously it's a prospect. You figure out things like geo-proximity. Is she close to a store? That you would know based on her smartphone, using GPS information, GPS, GPRS. Then you have things like lifetime events. You have channel preferences. You have the kinds of offers and messages that she would like to get. So based on the genome of the person and based on events, you would be able to make targeted recommendations which would be the right best course of action for the retailer, hence making the retailer more relevant and increasing stickiness with Joanne. So I call it being intensely personal. So what do? Any good recommendation or personalization engine should have a holistic view of the customer. It should have information about shopping behavior, browsing behavior, what have you put on your wish list, what do you like on Facebook, what do your friends like, your natural predilection to things, your interests, hobbies, etc. All of it across all the channels. It has to be semantic aware. You should know not just the Facebook likes, but you should also know what is her experience been with customer service, CRM systems, her customer feedback, etc. It has to be context aware. Is she close to a store? Can I interest her in a coupon right now? And it should also be self-learning. There has to be machine learning, artificial intelligence. The system has to be distributed and scalable. So the obligatory architecture slide. How does it work? You have a huge variety of data sources. You have the product, which is not only the product, but the master data about the product. It's information about, statistically, like Amazon says, people that bought this also bought something else. So it's information at that level. It is information about the customer, prior shopping behavior, what has she been browsing, Before she buys something, why does she abandon a shopping cart? And what does she put in her wish list? Clienteling information, what do you try to cross-sell, upsell? Corporate initiatives. Retailers themselves may have initiatives they may run, like something on like a Christmas sale, Thanksgiving, or they may have overstock, they would like to push something out. The shopping context, whether you're in a store, online. Information analytics from third-party folks, syndicated data providers such as Nielsen, etc. And finally, the whole mass of social information. Again, not all social information is the same. Some of it is more relevant and some of it is not. Some of it is questionable. So you have to be very judicious. But all of this information is at various levels of granularity and hierarchy. So to be able to get to the information model, that is the consumer genome, what you need to do is to be able to collect all this information, transform it, churn it into the right information model. So that is the secret, that's the first part of the secret sauce. To be able to get all this information, some of it is structured, a lot of it is unstructured, some of it is semi-structured at various levels of hierarchy and so on, and bring it to the common base information model, which then you can work out of. And then some magic happens in the interim. I'll talk about that just a little bit later. And what comes out of it is a set of services. Now, these are recommendation services, promotion services, campaign services, and so on. These are essentially SOA APIs. These are essentially, it's basically service-oriented architecture. These are services that can interact with a point-of-sale system in a store, mobile devices, your e-commerce site, email campaigns, Facebook apps, and so on. At a basic architecture level, this is highly scalable, distributed computing platform. It's based on Hadoop. This is the Infosys implementation. It's obviously multi-channel. It is service-oriented, as I mentioned. And behind the scenes, let me talk about a few things. The internal representation is on Hadoop, which obviously gives us the ability to do MapReduce and do massively parallel processing. At the same time, it is not just, the consumer genome is not a static thing. It is self-learning. So as Joanne moves on in life and her station in life changes, this has to learn and change accordingly. So how does it work in reality? Once I know Joanne's consumer genome, and when she logs in, right from that time, the landing page is highly customized. She sees what is fitting her consumer genome. So essentially what happens is we use these machine learning algorithms. I'll just throw a few names, k-means, fuzzy k-means, naive Bayes. There are all kinds of clustering algorithms that essentially try to figure out exactly the way that Pandora does with its music genome, figures out clusters of people with similar consumer genome, similar buying patterns, similar patterns about notions about price, value, similar buying propensity, and is able to cluster people on those characteristics, and it's constantly learning and getting better. Obviously, different things are weighted differently. A purchase has the most weight. As of now, sentiment has less weight. Hopefully, when we get to emotions and better tracking, we'll get better. So broadly, any system that mines the consumer genome has to have the following capabilities. It has to be complete. It has to be end-to-end, get this huge smorgasbord of potential data elements that you can get, synthesize all of it, and be able to provide insight to all device endpoints, whether it is a point of sale, mobile, etc. It has to have cross-channel capability, of course, single view of the customer. It has to be highly scalable. So Hadoop is an example. You could think of Cassandra. It's a multi-master database as an example. So it has to be highly, highly scalable. It absolutely has to be semantic aware. So because there is a lot of insight which can be found. Again, it's not all the insight. It's not just any blog out there. It's more relevant if it is some conversation that has happened with a customer service representative or some feedback on a site, etc. It has to be self-learning, and there are various kinds of algorithms that constantly learn. And it has to be integrated with your e-commerce platforms or your point-of-sale systems. So is this real? Yes, it is. Let me give an example of a customer. This is a retailer where a typical campaign would have about, let's say it went to about 100 customers, would have about 2% conversion, which is not very far away from what you would see in real retail. A typical campaign has about 2% conversion. By conversion, I mean somebody actually buying something from a campaign. When we were able to expand the pie and then start targeting campaigns based on the interests of the person, as long as they opened up Facebook, etc. to us, we found we were able to reach more number of customers and get higher conversions. Once we were then able to tie it into events in people's lives and the needs that they had, we found we were able to influence even a higher number of customers and get even higher converts. Finally, once we went from the individual to friend and friend of a friend, we found we were able to hit even more number of people and get significantly more conversion. Now, this is just one case study, but the promise of this is phenomenal. If you show this kind of data to a retailer, they would say, okay, where do I sign? This is so important. So the key is that you have to be able to find out what is the consumer genome, what drives a customer behavior, and once you're able to figure it out, the rest is just magic. So I'll just finish very quickly. So every retailer has to try to understand the consumer genome, and it's not just a retailer, it's also a bank, it's also a healthcare company. Every single business should try and map and understand the consumer genome. If it does so, increase traffic, drive top line, drive margins. Thank you so much.
Hi. One of the examples you gave for the genome was the Pandora example, where you say, like, I like this music, I like that one, therefore you might like that other one, so you present that music to the person. But in this situation, the user is like, it's conscious that he's making the decision, that he's giving this information to the service. Yes. So the question is, when you start using social data, that people put it publicly, but some of them might not even consider that this information is being read by other companies. Mm-hmm. Don't you have like the freak out element where somebody suddenly gets like a promotion that is extremely personalized and they will start thinking like Big Brother, like where did it came from? Who's following me?
Yeah, so that's actually, that's always one of the biggest trade-offs. It's between privacy and relevance. So at a philosophical level, at some point, at some level, if you want extreme relevance, you have to forego some amount of privacy. But having said that, to answer your question, the folks in this particular case study, they actually actively opened up their Facebook, and they were willing to share all this information. And in fact, you'd be surprised, people today on LinkedIn and Facebook, they even talk about when they're going out on vacation, And so the thing is, a thief would obviously love to have that information. But having said that, social is just one aspect of it, okay? Just looking at a customer's past buying behavior, just looking at how a customer does browse on a site, what a person puts on a wish list, is able to give you a huge amount of information about the customer's buying behavior or buying propensity. So the social is obviously is great, but even without that, you would be able to find a lot of information about the consumer's buying patterns.